Hi, I'm Mr. Simons, and sometimes there's no accounting for taste. Now that's a hilarious joke, so I know that you are laughing hysterically because today, well, it might be tonight, who knows when you're watching this video, we are talking about the current account, hence the accounting joke. Okay, the current account is part of the balance of payments. If you haven't seen the intro to the balance of payments, click the little eye thing at the top of the screen there to see that video. It's very important to get the basics before we get into the actual accounts. For those of you that are with me and are ready, let's get started. So our focus in the video is what is the current account of the balance of payments. Now, remember, don't forget that the balance of payments is a record of the transactions between Australia and the rest of the world over a period of time. And the balance of payments, it consists of two distinct but related accounts. The current account, which is what we're going to look at in this video, and the capital and financial account, which is a separate video. So let's get into the details of the current account. It's very important that we are clear on what the current account is. When we were explaining it, we need to be able to provide a very clear, accurate, and complete definition. So the current account is a record of very specific transactions between Australia and the rest of the world. Because remember that the balance of payments as a whole the focus of the balance of payments is on recording transactions. That's the point, trade, financial flows. The current account records specific transactions. So the current account is the part of the balance of payments that shows the receipts and payments. So we can be specific here. So money in, receipts, money out, payments, for trade in goods and services, transfer payments, so welfare payments, and income flows between Australia and the rest of the world in a given time period. So it's very important that when we are thinking about the current account, the specific types of transactions that it includes are those that involve trade in goods and services, movement of transfer payments, and income flows. Another very important point is that these transactions are non-reversible. They cannot be undone once they are done. So this is the basics of the current account. One thing I'd like to add before we move into the structure of the current account is that when we talk about money going in, we call it a credit, and money going out, we call it a debit. And that was some of the basic processes that we looked at in that introductory video. Okay, now let's move on to the structure of the current account. Here is what the current account looks like. Remember, the current account is part of the balance of payments. Don't worry about these years. This is a historical document. What it's just showing you is how the current account is set up. So you can see that the current account is divided into different components. So we've got goods, services, and then we do balance on goods and services. Then we've got primary income, secondary income, and then when we put all that together, that gives us the balance on the current account. So what we're going to do for each of these components is write down what they are. So let's start with goods. So goods refers to the difference between what Australia receives for its exports and what it pays for its imports. Because you can see here that with goods, we look at, okay, this is how much Australia receives for its exports. This is how much it pays for its imports. And then that gives us net goods. Is Australia receiving more money coming in, or is it paying more going out in terms of those imports? And remember, in talking about these particular exports and imports, our focus is on physical goods. It's not in services, because that would come up in services. Our next section here is all about services, right? Services. So with services, services refers to services being bought and sold. So credits here would be services that are sold because money is coming in. Debits refers to services that are bought because that's money leaving Australia. So services being bought and sold without people receiving a physical good. So if it's a physical good, it would sit in this goods section. If it's this service where you don't actually get a physical good, it's in the services section. And the key thing with services is to think about, well, what types of services are we thinking of? So we could look at things like education or tourism. Those are kind of the key services that would be recorded in this part of the current account. Our next section in the current account is this balance on goods and services. And we can just abbreviate that to BOGS. It's true, economists will know what you're talking about. The balance on goods and services. And basically, to get the balance on goods and services, all we do is we add net goods and net services, and we get the balance on goods and services. We've done goods, services, we've got the balance there. Now we're looking at primary income. And primary income is a very important part of the current account and the balance of payments overall. When we talk about primary income, this is what we're looking at. So with net primary income, we're looking at earnings on investments. So we're looking at the earnings on the investments that Australians have overseas and the earnings on investments that foreigners have in Australia. So when we talk about earnings on investment, we're talking about things like rent, profit, interest, dividends. All of those things are the rewards for doing different types of investments. So when we look at primary income here, credit refers to money coming in, and debit is money leaving Australia. So you can see here with primary income, we have more income leaving Australia than coming in. So we're just looking at that section. So primary income, okay, that's all about earnings on different types of investments. Okay, then we move to secondary income. And secondary income is a pretty small and technical account. So secondary income is a small and technical component of the current account. What we sort of talk about is what's called non-market transfers. So the kind of things that we look at here are pensions. So say an Australian moves to Greece and that Australian had worked all their life and is entitled to an Australian pension. That money goes from Australia to Greece and that we keep track of it through secondary income. We also, in secondary income, keep track of unconditional foreign aid. Unconditional foreign aid is where foreign aid is given to another country and they can do whatever they want with it. It is not tied to a particular purpose. The final thing that sits in secondary income, or major thing, is something called remittances. And remittances are where foreign workers send money home. So it's technical, a bit complicated, but if you kind of think about those three main areas, that should be sufficient in terms of classifying things. So our final bit of the current account is we work out the balance overall. What is the value overall? So we can say this. So the balance on the current account equals BOGS, the balance on goods and services, net goods and net services, plus net primary income, plus net secondary income. And that gives us the balance on the current account. Okay, so that's the basics of the components of the current account. You need to know what each of the components are, because when we start looking at transactions and relationships, we need to know where everything is going to go. Okay, from here, I strongly suggest you watch the capital and financial account video to see the other account in the balance of payments. Okay, any questions? Leave a comment. Thank you so much for watching.